Have you ever heard of the saying, blood is thicker than water? It's meant to signify that family bonds are the strongest ties we have. But what happens when those bonds are severed by the very people they're meant to protect? Today, we're diving into a case that is as perplexing as it is chilling, a story that will make you question everything you think you know about family dynamics. This is the story of Jennifer, a woman accused of the unthinkable. Jennifer grew up in what appeared to be the perfect family. Her father was a successful businessman, her mother a respected community volunteer. They lived in a beautiful house in a quiet, affluent suburb. To outsiders, the family was the picture of success and happiness. Jennifer was the golden child, an honors student, a talented pianist, and captain of the debate team. She was on a clear path to an Ivy League education and a brilliant future. But behind the closed doors of their pristine home, a different story was unfolding. The pressure to be perfect was immense. Every grade, every performance, every decision was scrutinized. Love and affection in her family weren't given freely, they were earned. A B+ on a report card would result in a week of silent treatment. A missed note during a piano recital meant condescending remarks for days. Jennifer's life was a constant performance, and the audience, her parents, was impossible to please. She felt less like a daughter and more like a project, an investment they were meticulously managing for maximum return. As Jennifer entered her late teens, she started to develop her own dreams, her own desires, which didn't always align with her parents' grand plan. She fell in love with art, spending hours sketching in a secret notebook. She dreamed of going to art school, of creating, of expressing the turmoil she felt inside. When she finally mustered the courage to tell her parents, their reaction was swift and brutal. They called it a frivolous hobby and forbade her from wasting her potential. They confiscated her sketchbooks and enrolled her in extra advanced math courses. Her dream was dismissed, and her spirit was crushed. This was the breaking point. The constant pressure, the lack of acceptance, and the invalidation of her identity began to fester. Jennifer became withdrawn and secretive. Her bright smile was replaced by a vacant stare. Her friends noticed the change, but couldn't break through the walls she had built around herself. They didn't know that Jennifer was living a double life. Online, she created a new identity, a world where she was a celebrated artist, where people praised her work and encouraged her passion. This digital escape was the only place she felt seen and valued. But the online world couldn't fix her reality. The tension at home escalated. Arguments became a daily occurrence, echoing through the halls of their perfect house. It was during one of these heated confrontations that the unthinkable happened. The details of that night are pieced together from forensic evidence and fragmented accounts. Neighbors reported hearing loud shouting, followed by a sudden, eerie silence. The next morning, when Jennifer's parents didn't show up for their usual tennis match, a concerned friend called the police for a wellness check. What the officers discovered was a scene of utter devastation. The perfect family was gone, and the only person left was Jennifer, found sitting in her room, seemingly in a daze, surrounded by her sketches. The immediate conclusion was clear. Jennifer, the golden child, had snapped. She was arrested, and the case seemed open and shut. The prosecution painted a picture of a spoiled, ungrateful daughter who lashed out when she didn't get her way. The media had a field day, portraying her as a cold, calculating monster. But her defense attorney, a seasoned public defender named Sarah, saw something else. She saw a young woman who had been systematically broken down, a victim of years of emotional and psychological torment. Sarah decided to dig deeper, to look past the obvious and uncover the secrets the family had worked so hard to hide. She started by investigating the family's finances, a move that the prosecution deemed irrelevant. What she found was startling. Jennifer's father's successful business was a house of cards, on the brink of collapse. He had been embezzling money for years, not just from his company, but from his clients, many of whom were their close friends and neighbors. He was millions of dollars in debt, and the walls were closing in. The pressure he put on Jennifer wasn't just about high standards. It was about creating a smokescreen of perfection to hide his catastrophic failures. Jennifer's success was meant to be his redemption, a way to maintain their social standing even as their financial world crumbled. Sarah's investigation then took another turn. She discovered that Jennifer's father had taken out massive life insurance policies on himself and his wife, with Jennifer as the sole beneficiary. But there was a catch. The policies would be void in the case of suicide. Suddenly, a new theory emerged. What if this wasn't what it looked like? What if Jennifer was not the perpetrator but a pawn in a much darker game? The trial was a media circus. Sarah presented her findings, arguing that Jennifer's father, facing financial ruin and public disgrace, had devised a horrific plan. He would stage a scene to look like a violent confrontation, making it appear that Jennifer had lost control, and in the chaos he would end his own life and his wife's, framing his daughter for the crime. This would ensure the life insurance payout, preserving his legacy and providing for Jennifer, albeit from behind bars. It was a twisted, desperate act from a man who valued appearance above all else, even his own family's lives. The prosecution scoffed, calling it a desperate work of fiction. They had a confession. Well, sort of. In her dazed state after the event, Jennifer had muttered the words, "I did it, it's all my fault." The prosecution clung to this as their cornerstone, but Sarah argued it wasn't a confession of a crime, but a cry of guilt from a lifetime of being told that everything was her fault. Every failure, every disappointment, every argument, it was always Jennifer's fault. It was a conditioned response, beaten into her psyche for years. The jury was torn. On one hand, there was the forensic evidence and the confession. On the other, there was the story of a girl pushed to the brink and a father with a mountain of secrets. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source: Jennifer's secret sketchbooks. A forensic psychologist analyzed her drawings, revealing a timeline of her declining mental state. But the most recent sketches were different. They weren't just expressions of sadness. They depicted scenes of arguments, of her father looking desperate, of a shadowy plan she didn't fully understand but could feel closing in. They were a subconscious record of the truth. In a dramatic closing argument, Sarah presented the sketches to the jury, walking them through the story they told. A story not of a killer, but of a witness, a victim. She asked them to look beyond the headlines and see the real Jennifer. The jury deliberated for 3 days. The world held its breath. The verdict came back: not guilty. Gasps filled the courtroom. Jennifer, now free, had a long road to recovery ahead of her. The story doesn't end with a celebration, but with the quiet, somber reality of a life that needs to be rebuilt from the ashes. It serves as a haunting reminder that the most damaging secrets are often the ones hidden in plain sight, behind the facade of a picture-perfect life. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the complexities of the human condition. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. Stay safe and stay curious.